Stellar Age Discovery. 2 years since the last age, but I would argue it is the first new age with something truly novel about it since Space Age Mars was released back in 2019. Actually, that's kind of a lie. There are several new things. A much more fleshed out colony with a new minigame, more interesting units, thankfully none with keen eye, decision nodes in the tech tree, permanent boosts from the tech tree, and even space giraffes. Short disclaimer, I was given early access to this age, but the opinions expressed by me in this video are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of InnoGames. We'll start with the two most important questions, expansions and the Great Building. Per expansions, this is the first age in forever that does not introduce a new expansion that you can buy with medals. This means that for all of us who are not planning to immediately jump into the Stellar Age, we will not be getting the new medals expansion. This age does not even have a continent map, more on that later, so you also will not be getting any expansions from there in a lower age. If you do decide to make the jump, you can expect a grand total of 10 new expansions, 2 from the tech tree and 8 premium ones that you have to spend diamonds on. Expect those premium expansions to cost a pretty penny too. Each will be 5,250 diamonds for a total of 42,000 diamonds for all of them. Probably the main thing you'll be aiming to place in any new expansions would be the new Great Building. Meet the Shattered Horizon Siphon, a 4x4 building with a very cool name and awesome animation that is aimed at only the highest tier of players on beta. You see, on beta, it provides a 1 to 5% multiplicative army boost for your base army boosts and supplies at its copper tier, with a contribution bonus to gold tier Great Buildings at its silver tier. I could talk your ear off about all these boosts and whether they're worth it, but due to the Great Building update being active on beta and live servers not having the update yet, these are not the bonuses that you'll be seeing when Stellar Age Discovery launches. No, instead of multiplicative army boosts, you'll only get normal army boosts for attacking and defending armies, somewhat like the Terracotta Army. We don't know how strong those boosts will be, so it may not even be worth clearing the space for this one until the next iteration of the Great Building update arrives. If the costs are similar to how it is on beta, you may be better off just sticking with the Stellar Warship if you really want to spend forge points for flat army boosts, or going for other buildings like those from the Quantum Incursions or Guild Battlegrounds if you want to save your forge points and get something just as strong. Now that the Great Building and expansions are out of the way, let's talk about what those of you who are actually going to be moving into Stellar Age Discovery are going to be experiencing, starting with fighting. As usual, there are 6 new units, 5 normal and 1 champion, but what's not usual is how much of a step up these are. Their base stats are anywhere from 75 to 90% stronger than Space Hub units, and most importantly, they no longer have keen eye, which should mean a lot less randomness with the results of your fights. While each of these units has some strong skills, including Contact, Stealth, Frenzy, and Power Shot all being available, what will define the fighting in this age are the bonuses each unit has. This is something that until this point in the game you could get by without knowing anything about, but not so much here. Every unit in the game has bonuses against other unit types or when on certain types of terrain. The Stellar Age Discovery units are no different, but the size of these bonuses is a huge increase from any other time in the game. Here, we're seeing up to 12,500 points. While these bonuses are not boosted by your army boosts, they are added on after, they could play a heavy role in deciding which units you need to bring to bear against enemy armies. It is a little early to say for certain that a specific unit combination is best, but I have been having good results with faster ranged units and some rogues thrown in. Beyond that, I'll leave you to experiment and see what works best for you. Of course, you will be able to produce these units in Space Hub via buildings that produce next stage units, so if you do plan on sticking around in Space Hub for a little while, consider trying out the new units to see if they work for you. Even with using the Stellar Age units, meaning that you lack the critical hit or keen eye, you may still get some uplift thanks to the bonuses and increased defense stats. Some folks seem to be having good results with using next stage units in Space Hub on beta, so give them a shot. Of course, if you want homegrown organic units, you will need to research their barracks on the tech tree along with the rest of the new stuff in this age. This tech tree is quite expensive, although not necessarily in forge points. While it does cost 241,000 forge points compared to Space Hub's 119,000, adjusted for inflation, Space Hub would cost over 1 million forge points in today's currency. It makes Discovery look like a bargain. No, what makes Discovery's tech tree expensive is a new currency called stellar points. These are sort of like forge points, except they can only be produced in limited amounts in your colony, so don't be expecting to rush through the tech tree all on day one. Interestingly though, you only need previous age's goods from Space Hub, and even then, none of Space Hub's special good. These are the full costs of the tech tree as they are on beta currently for your reference. Also, as I hinted at earlier, this tech tree has decision nodes called waypoints in it. These are a permanent choice that you make where you choose a certain path of text to go down. Once you choose, there is no undoing it. While that sounds pretty interesting in theory, unfortunately this mechanic is somewhat neutered in Stellar Age Discovery. Here, all the choice does is give you the same technologies in a different order. For example, would you rather have the expansion and gold contribution bonus before you gain some new boost to your colony, or would you rather the other way around? On that note, you may have noticed as I've been showing the tech tree that there are diamonds and the gold contribution bonus as unlocks. This is the last new thing introduced to the tech tree. One-time rewards in terms of the diamonds, giving a total of 400 over the course of the tree, and permanent gold tier contribution bonuses that exist outside of any great building. You can only get an extra 10%, but when you consider that the same 10% would cost millions of forge points via the Shattered Horizon siphon, it is nothing to scoff at. As the Great Building update won't be live when Discovery launches, you simply won't gain the gold contribution bonus for unlocking techs on live servers. It will be added when the Great Building update arrives. Next up, I wasn't quite sure where to squeeze this in, so let's briefly talk about recurring quests. There are 15 in this age, with many being expensive or difficult to complete regularly. If you want to be looping quests, the gather goods, win fights, defeat units, and gain population ones are likely the most easy to complete. As always, you are able to get 20 diamonds once from each of these quests, meaning that you can get 300 diamonds from them prior to any chateau bonus you may have. Let's finally move on to the home of the space giraffes, the colony. You'll notice that to get there, the spaceport has gotten a new coat of paint, and that's because this colony is unlike any of the space ages that came before it. It's easy to see when opening the building menu. There's a ton of empty space. This colony will not reset when you move on to the next stellar age. Instead, it will be built and improved on with future ages, likely with more expansions, new buildings, and so on. As it is a new colony, it has some new resources that you'll want to be familiar with. The three main ones are fusion cells, stellar points, and stellar capacity. Fusion cells are produced by only a single building in the colony, the fusion cell reactor, which is unlocked via the second technology. Make it a priority to immediately place this down as you need fusion cells to complete missions. The second main resource for the colony are stellar points. As I mentioned earlier, you can think of these like forge points as they are a core requirement of research. These are also needed to complete missions. Stellar points have a maximum limit on the number that you can have, so make sure you are always spending them to stay below that limit. The third and final main resource will be stellar capacity. This is its own resource, it's not the limit for stellar points. Why did something have to be named capacity when it is a distinct resource? I haven't the foggiest idea, but be aware that the points and capacity are separate things. Capacity is somewhat equivalent to the coins and supplies in your settlement. It's needed to build all of the buildings. Also, like the two other main resources, you need it for the missions. Now, the strange thing about this settlement is that not all the population is created equal. You have your normal population, but there are also special workers that are only unlocked in the tech tree. You need engineers to build stellar points buildings, chief engineers to build stellar point boosting buildings, scientists to build stellar capacity buildings, chief scientists to build stellar capacity boosting buildings, and lastly, explorers to build mission buildings. You can only unlock these special workers via the tech tree and only in very limited quantities. This means that you are heavily limited on the number of each building you can place. You can't just fill your city with mission buildings. No, you can only place up to 4 of them by the end of the tech tree, or similar situations with the other buildings. Note that unless you are planning to spend diamonds on expansions for the colony, I would recommend avoiding permanently placing the stellar point and stellar capacity boosting buildings. These are the ones that need the chief engineers and scientists. The only case that they might be useful is if you can't place down any more of the base production buildings for those resources and you have the space to put down one of the boosting buildings. For your final layout, once you've unlocked all the technologies, you shouldn't have any of the boosting buildings at all as they take up too much space for the limited benefit they provide. I think we've finally kicked the can down the road far enough, so let's talk about the missions. These are so important to the Stellar Ages that they have replaced the campaign map, even going so far as to change the user interface to not go directly to the map, but let you shortcut to the missions. The primary value behind missions are that they give you the special good, void shards, and encoded tablets, which are sort of like a special good, except that they are only used for research, and buildings that produce special goods, like the space carrier, do not produce the tablets. Besides shards and tablets, missions can also provide current or previous age goods, current age units and rogues, and for the rarest legendary missions, even fragments of 1-up and mass self-aid kits. Each mission has two things that decide the rewards you get: the cost of starting the mission and the difficulty of completing it. The rarity and the depth. The higher the rarity and the greater the depth, the higher the difficulty, the more it will cost to start the mission, and the better the rewards you receive. You can choose the depth for each mission yourself, although starting out you only have a depth of 1. Further depths are unlocked with specific technologies spread out in the tech tree. Be aware, however, that the deeper you go, the longer it will take, starting at 20 hours for a depth of 1 and increasing to 36 hours for the maximum depth of 5. The rarity of the mission is random, with the lower ones obviously being the most common. You are able to refresh the missions to try to get ones with higher rarities or ones offering the rewards you want, but it costs you some fusion cells, and as those are in short supply, I don't think it's going to be worth refreshing too many times at the start of the age. I recommend always trying to choose the highest depth you can that lines up with your schedule in order to maximize your rewards. Once the timer for the mission is done, you're given a choice to fight or negotiate. Negotiations are fairly straightforward. All 10 of the previous and current age goods at the quantities shown here with 4 attempts. Fights are a little bit more complicated in terms of enemy armies. Instead of them having set army boosts, the enemy army's boosts are a multiplier of your own army boosts. For example, a common mission with a depth of 1 and it's showing as a 1-star difficulty will have you facing 6 previous age units with 66 to 69% of your army boosts. In other words, if you had 10,000% attacking army attack and defense boosts, the enemy army would have 6,600 to 6,900%. In this chart, I've tried to sum up what my data shows for each rarity, depth, and difficulty shown. It is possible that I've missed some potential combinations, or you may see small ranges rather than single percents for some combinations, but this should give you a general idea. Note that having an Arctic Orangey or Cosmic Catalyst is almost a requirement here, as it makes defeating the enemy armies quite a bit easier. This is a great transition to my thoughts on the age, as this multiplier of your army boosts is actually really cool. I think something like this could be interesting if it's expanded to the Heroic Tavern, Guild Battlegrounds expeditions, or those Defeat This Army quests. It provides a scalable framework for fights that doesn't rely on hard-coded army boost values to keep the difficulty reasonable, and I have to give kudos to Inno for making a system that will maintain its relative difficulty into the future. Unfortunately, I will be taking away some kudos for the tech tree. Perhaps the most frustrating thing for me relating to the tech tree is the way waypoints were implemented. Since the choice only lasts for 2 to 3 technologies and each path unlocks the same ones, just in a different order, there are really no consequences for your choices. According to the announcement, this is allegedly to teach the mechanic, and it will be built out further in later ages. I suppose that can be the case, but with the slow cadence at which we get new ages, I'd have hoped to see Inno take some bigger swings and be confident with longer lasting choices. Regardless, I am hoping that in the next age they will be making your choice important for diving into a certain playstyle or making you make a tough decision. For example, maybe you have to choose between unlocking an expansion for your main city or gaining more of a powerful limited boost. Also, while it is a small point, I do wish that the tech tree buildings unlocked for the main city provided more value. Maybe in Discovery, they could have been used to provide collection bonuses to the colony resources, or to increase the limits for stellar points and capacity, or the military buildings to provide greater unit bonuses for each specific unit. Now we come to my least favorite part of the video, where I do feel remiss if I don't mention the massive elephant in the room that has been there for some time in regards to the art of this age, which is of course the generative AI slop. While it has been something that Inno has used in many parts of the game before now, I don't think it's been nearly as blatant or as disappointing in this age. All the tech tree icons, the UI, the quest givers, it just reeks of slop, and I mean, the proof is there. Does this really look like Rinbin or the General? I know that Inno has artists that do great work, and I want to see what I know they can do, not art that looks like it never got past the placeholder stage. The message it sends is one of cut corners. If they don't care enough to put in the minimum effort on some of the art, why should you expect anything of value from the content itself? And that's a problem because the content for this age is decent. There are truly new mechanics for the first time in 7 years, and it makes me genuinely hopeful for the future of where the next chapters in Forge of Empires story may be going. However, if the cost of that is a game whose art looks more and more like generic drivel that even a rushed game jam entry could do better than, I can't help but wish they took the time to put out a product that visually holds up to the effort that they put into the game design, implementation, and development. Anyways, I think that wraps up the end of this surprisingly long video about Stellar Age Discovery. Call it SAD, STAD, whatever you want, it's finally here and I'm curious about your thoughts. Is it worth the wait? Let me know what you think in the comments below or via my Discord server, the link is in the description below to join, and as always, I'll see you all next time.